everybody. Thank you so much for tuning into this week's episode for Coping Together. I'm your host, Faith, with the Mental Health Association of Central Florida. As always, here to talk to you about events related to COVID-19 and coming up with coping strategies, wellness tools, and everything for what's going on right now for us, as well as talking about how mental health really ties into that. With me today, I am excited to bring back a former guest, Dr. Deborah Beidel with UCF Restores. So how are you doing, Dr. Beidel?
I'm doing well. Thank you for inviting me back to chat with you again today.
Absolutely. Thank you. And so as excited as I am to bring you back, it's not always a fun, we talk about some hard topics on this show. And today, we're in a rough week because we're coming up on, is it 19 years since 9/11?
19 years since 9/11.
19 years. And so I'll really start by saying that I was very young when 9/11 happened. And so while I, like so many of my peers, we were around, we really don't remember the power of what happened that day. I think that you can ask any adult nowadays and they'll be able to tell you exactly where they were. If you ask someone like me, I might say I was probably in preschool. And so because of that, with us, being in the era of COVID right now, and we come up on this day and we try to remember it every year and remember the lives lost and remember, the way that it brought our country together. I wanted to bring you on as someone who can talk about trauma, talk about what this event was like. But I do feel the need to start it off by saying I don't remember. And so I am very honored to bring you onto the show to talk about this topic. To help educate myself, my fellow peers. I know we all would like to know a little bit more about it. So with that being said, are you comfortable sharing a little bit about your memory of that day?
Absolutely. I think this is good for people to understand because in some ways there's some relationship to COVID and in other ways there isn't. But what I remember most of all from that morning was at first just a feeling of confusion. I was personally supposed to be on a plane to Brazil that day and never made it to the airport.
Wow.
But what I remember is at first was just confusion. When the first plane hit the tower, everyone thought it was an accident. Then when the next plane hit the tower and the plane hit in the Pentagon, people knew something was wrong, but no one was quite sure. And I remember everyone just wondering what was happening. Were we being attacked? What was going on? And 19 years ago, we didn't have things like Zoom. So making contact with your loved ones was really difficult. I was in Washington, D.C. at that time at the University of Maryland. So we had lots of difficulties in the fact that the city just shut down. No one could go anyplace for a while because of what happened. So I remember at first there was confusion. And then I remember that everyone really came together. And part of that had to do with President Bush standing on that pile of rubble and saying, the world will be hearing from us very soon. But the other thing I remember that night was watching the leaders of Congress, Democrat, Republicans, standing together, giving a press conference, and then suddenly breaking out and singing God Bless America. That's a memory I have from that day that I'll never forget, how we came together to protect our country. And so my analogy to COVID is, it's a confusing situation now. We don't know what's really happening, how long it's going on. And I'm hoping that we can once again come together as a country to support each other because that's how we're going to get through it.
Thank you for touching on that. I'm sure that was an incredible sight to see. And I do, want to add to that there's a lot of things in our country today that we're divided on. We're allowed to, as Americans, have differing opinions. But to see a situation like that where you're all just kind of reminded of humanity and love for your country. And that's, why we're all here and why we do what we do every day. And so I'm sure that was just an incredible sight to see. And to see people again, working together during COVID and now, 19 years later, in a different way, like you said, but seeing our country come together regardless and try to remember, how to be there for everybody during such an unknown, unprecedented time. And so that really leads me into my next point that I wanted to ask you, which is every year we often events happen, whether a lot of times it's outside, but, we do these events to remember the lives lost, remember, how it brought our country together. And so I want to ask you, what are your thoughts on how do we give recognition to this day and remember all those things when we're in an era of social distancing. And, we do have to keep our physical health in mind when it comes to that kind of thing.
I think it's really difficult. I remember about 2 years ago, going to the memorial to Ground Zero with a 9/11 first responder, and the impact of that really hitting me in a way that it didn't hit me watching the news. I mean, to go into Ground Zero and see all that and really feel the humanity of the lives lost, but also of our first responders who went there that day and who stayed there for months afterwards, digging through that rubble, trying to find people, trying to find evidence. The idea of how they came together to support each other and to work for the rest of us, to bring some closure to all those families. And I think what we have to remember on this day is that even if we don't get together, we should in some way try to do something to honor first responders. The first responders in New York are still suffering from physical effects of that day and those weeks and months afterwards as well. They're dying from cancer as a result of what they did for the rest of us. And so I think the best thing we can do in this time is to honor a first responder, to reach out, to do something, even here in town. We don't have to go to New York City, but boy, I bet the fire departments would really like a plate of cookies, right? On that day. So, or the police department. And maybe you can't bring it to them. Maybe you can order it, or maybe you can bring it to them and just say, thank you for all you do. In memory of those lost on 9/11, I want to honor you for what you do. If you know someone, reach out to them that day. And if you know a 9/11 first responder, and there are some here in our area, reach out to them as well. This is a hard day. We don't know from television all the devastation that occurred on that day. There are videos at Ground Zero that talk about how many people actually jumped from buildings. So I think that we need to think about what they went through, the fact that, as you and I have always said, trauma changes someone forever, right? You'll never be the same person. So I think we need to remember that and reach out and honor first responders that we know and that are in our midst.
I think it's really important to, really comment on one of the things that you just said, because as someone who, again, wasn't there, someone who, when you know someone who goes through trauma, whether right now it's our first responders with COVID, it's our first responders with 9/11, I think a lot of people worry that if they do talk to that person on a day like on 9/11, are they going to upset them? And so I want to kind of clarify. So it's okay if, we reach out to our first responders. Let's say we do know someone who was affected by 9/11, to reach out on them on that day.
Absolutely. You don't have to say, hey, are you having a bad day? You can just say, I know this is an anniversary of an event, and I just want you to know I'm here for you. Just want you to know I love you. Just want to reach out and tell you that if you want to talk, I'm here. It doesn't have to be coming from a place where I know you're suffering. It's coming from a place where you're making a social connection. That's how we get through all of the difficult times in all of these traumas, and particularly in COVID as well. It's that social connectedness. It may not be in the same way. It may not be physical connectedness, but that social connectedness is what keeps us going forward. So I think to reach out to someone who may have been affected, whether they were in New York or Washington or Shanksville, Pennsylvania, and just say, I know it's 9/11, and I'm just, contacting you to let you know that I'm here if you want to talk. And then you just listen. You don't have to say another word.
That was, I think, an excellent point as well. I was going to ask you, what do you say if they do respond? And so I think you make an excellent point that, sometimes just listening is all someone needs in a situation.
It's not the specific words. We should never be worried about the words that we say. The only thing we have to do is show that we care. And that's just by reaching out in whatever way we can. You're showing that you care, that you recognize this might be difficult, and that's it. You've thrown that lifeline to people, and that's what's most important.
And if I may add to it, going back to your point about, recognizing current first responders, even those maybe who weren't involved in 9/11, but they're still every day, like you said, they're fighting for our country, they're fighting for us. first responders right now, especially with COVID. I mean, they're putting their health at risk. They're putting their lives on hold in a lot of ways to care for other people. And I think what you're saying, is a very great point, which is just, saying thank you to them, saying, I appreciate what you do. I see you, I hear you. And maybe it's, like you said, it's a plate of homemade cookies, or my immediate thought is, have like Shipt or Publix, send over cookies to them, something like that. But just a really great way to say thank you. Or even, I've seen a lot of people do art and those kind of things. I mean, that's another example, right?
Exactly, because we don't want to suggest that people have to pay money to do something, because lots of people are suffering in really difficult economic times right now. So like you said, just saying, sending some art that you made, going by and waving, hey guys, thank you for all you do. That's all it has to be. It just has to be the connection. And so while tangible gifts are nice, everybody likes cookies, it doesn't have to be that. It can be anything. Everybody likes to know that they're acknowledged. I don't have the source, but I remember reading just yesterday that this year, I think it was police officers are going to die because of COVID than of anything else this year, more than gunshots or being killed in the line of duty in other ways. It's going to be COVID that takes more police officers from us this year. And that's a frightening statistic to know that. So again, I think to say, we know there's danger, we know people have died, we appreciate you being there for us in this time of COVID and in memory of 9/11, I think is a powerful message that anyone can send.
Well, thank you for that. And thank you so much for coming on the show again. I know the first time we had you on, we were talking about COVID and how it impacts our first responders in a lot of ways. And we talked about that trauma that is, happening or sure to come for a lot of people. And I think it's really great that we're able to talk about that again and just talk about how important it is to recognize the people that, do that kind of work in our lives. And also, like you said, just being there to say, I'm here for you. Someone who is maybe having a hard time, that might even just open up a conversation for them or open up a feeling of, hey, I'm not as alone. So thank you for that.
Well, thank you. So.
Of course. Well, that's all the questions I have for you. Was there anything else that you wanted our audience to know?
No, I want to thank everybody for everything they've done to try and get us through this pandemic. We will get through it, and we'll get through it together. So thank you for the opportunity to reach out and talk to people and continue this shared experience.
Of course. And thank you so much. Thank you to all of you, as always, for watching Coping Together. If you have any questions about anything, please feel free to reach out to us at MHACF. Please also feel free to check out any information on UCF Trauma Restores. Dr. Beidel and her team do wonderful work. And we at MHACF, we often have referred clients to them. They're very able to answer questions. We're happy to answer any questions we can for you. And if you have any ideas for topics, any questions you'd like us to answer on this show, please feel free to reach out to us. I will include all of our information, as always, in the description. And thank you all so much for watching. It is so much fun and such a pleasure to get to do this show with all of you. So thank you, Dr. Beidel, and thank you to all of you, and I'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you.